Hi guys, it's Aoife from Fred VC Died Laughing and I'm here with another weekly wrap up, and as you can see I'm in a new place. I got new shelves, so these shelves are on the other side of my room and I have decorated most of them and they are just so pretty and I'm so happy with them. Most of the books on this bookshelf behind me are books that I've already read, and a lot of them are my favourite books. As you can see here behind me, I kind of have my little fantasy section and my Lord of the Rings section and stuff, and I have other little shelves over there as well where I have a little Harry Potter section, and then I have my old bookshelf which is mostly books that I still need to read. I haven't done any kind of bookshelf tour or anything before, mostly because they aren't videos that I personally like to watch anyway. I don't watch bookshelf tours, so I don't record them myself, but seeing as I do have new bookshelves and I have them nicely decorated and stuff, if you guys are interested in a bookshelf tour, please let me know. Just comment and let me know and I can try and sort that out. So I got a bunch of books read this week and I can't wait to tell you all about them. And the first book I read was Emperor of the Eight Islands. I got this from the library but I gave it back during the week, so I'll just show a picture of the book instead. And this is kind of a fantasy historical kind of book, I guess, based in Japan, and it is about a young man called Shikanoko, and it's about him growing up and just this kind of legend surrounding him. And basically there's like Shikanoku, there are these kind of weird kind of magician, kind of mage people, there is a evil kind of priest who tries to overthrow the ruler, there is a runaway prince, there is a autumn princess who is the person looking after the prince. There is just a lot going on in this book. There's loads of different stories, but overall I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the writing style. I really enjoyed kind of like just reading about a different place and different culture and all that kind of stuff. I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4 stars. I think the ending wasn't the best ending ever for me, and I think there are more books in this series. I'm not really sure, but I think there are more books coming, or there are already more books out, and it kind of follows on with the story, and I'll probably read them if I see them, but this one was quite enjoyable, and yeah, so 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was a NetGalley book, and it was The Undying by Ethan Reid. This is a really good book to read for October because it's kind of a survival zombie-esque story, and it is about a girl called Jeannie, and she goes to Paris with her friend Ben, and basically the second day they're in Paris, or the first full day they're in Paris, this kind of weird apocalypse thing happens and the earth kind of almost explodes. There's all sorts of weird things happening, and they basically have to try and survive it. There are these kind of creatures in it. They don't know, it's kind of like humans are becoming these kind of weird creatures, and I don't know, the way it was described, it reminded me a lot of like a mix between almost like The Walking Dead and The Strain. They're almost like vampiric slash zombies. It's kind of weird. This was really fast paced and it was a really fast to read. I got through it like within a day, I think, a good solid reading day, and I kind of got through it really quickly. I did have some problems with it. There were a lot of kind of tropey stuff when you come to survival stories. Like, I just hate the whole thing of how some people just turn so bad so quickly, and I'm like, would that really happen? Like, would people decide that it's okay to do these really bad things so quickly? There was very little form of government control or army control or anything to do with it in this book, which I found a little bit odd. And there was this one bit where Jeannie kind of, most of the story, Jeannie kind of takes care of this newborn that she finds, and at the end of the book she starts like expressing milk, and this girl is like a 20-year-old, never been pregnant, you know, never had any kind of mothering experience except babysitting, and suddenly she's like breastfeeding this child, and it's like the weirdest thing ever, because I was like, okay, I don't think that would actually ever happen in real life. Like, it was just really odd and I just didn't really like it. It was just so weird, and she had this like weird, and then she kept calling the baby or the boy or the newborn, and she wouldn't give him a name, and someone else gave him a name eventually, but she still didn't really use that a lot of the time, and I don't know, it just bugged me. This did show some really great parts of Paris. I've never been to Paris, but I think if people really love Paris or know Paris really well, there's loads of different mentions of loads of different places within Paris, and they go to loads of different places as well while they're trying to find somewhere safe to hold out the apocalypse, I guess. But yes, so overall it was okay, but it wasn't great, and I'm glad that it didn't take very long to read. So 2.5, 3 stars. The next book I read was The Stars Askew by Rjurik Davidson. This is a fantasy book. The first book was Unwrapped Sky, and this just follows on with the events that happened. There was a lot more world building in this book, which I really enjoyed. There was a lot of there's a lot of political intrigue in this book, which I don't always get because it's not really my thing. I'm not really interested that much into it, but I liked the characters enough that I can follow on with it and I can keep on going with the story. And just like this really weird side note, but I feel like Rjurik Davidson is an animal lover because I feel like he treats all the animals in his stories with a lot of respect most of the time. Like in a lot of fantasy stories you see it's kind of this thing in fantasy stories where horses and animals are treated really badly, and as an animal lover it really upsets me a lot when I read a book where an animal is treated very badly, or you know, a horse is ridden until it basically collapses dead, and in this book it didn't, and I just kind of got that feeling that he loves animals, so he respects the animals in his books, and I just really loved that. So I gave this a 3 stars overall, and I think if there's another book I'll pick it up as well. And then I read The Forest of Hands and Teeth by Carrie. This is a book I've been wanting to read for a really long time, and it is coming into a movie as well, and I'm really looking forward to that. This is kind of a book about a zombie apocalypse, but it's set like years in the future, after like years and years after the zombie apocalypse has happened, and it's about this girl called Mary who lives in this village, and she's surrounded by this forest which they call the Forest of Hands and Teeth, and her village have this system about looking after the zombies and what to do when people are bitten, and kind of they have their own traditions and cultures and stuff about like just during the year, and about weddings and ceremonies and stuff like that, and I really enjoyed that. And it's basically about Mary figuring out that things aren't as great as they seem, and the sisterhood, who is kind of the religious order that is in charge of the village, they probably keep a lot more secrets than they should, and there's a lot more that the normal people in the village don't know about, and it's kind of her exploring this world and then trying to figure out what she should do when the inevitable happens and things kind of collapse and she has to fight for her life. So for all this, it's really good. I just wish there was that little bit more for me. I felt like at times there was a lot of wandering and not a lot of action, and I just would have liked a little bit more action. I found it really interesting that the sisterhood is obviously a female organisation, and they're kind of like nuns, but the women, the ordinary women in the village, seem to have very little rights. They, you know, they have to marry or they become a nun. That's kind of what happens. And they don't seem to have as much freedom as the men do, and I just thought that was a really interesting way. Like, I'd love to know why Carrie Ryan decided to do that, rather than considering it is a sisterhood rather than having a brotherhood and having the women be a little bit less you know, less free, I guess. And I don't know, I just thought it was interesting. And I'm definitely going to read the next book in this one. I can't remember what it's called right now, but I will definitely pick it up and check it out. And yeah, so I gave this a strong 3 out of 5 stars, probably 3.5. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. The next book I read was a short middle grade book that I got from the library, and it's Storm Horse by Nick Garlick. This is about a little boy called Flip, and it's in the Netherlands in the 1960s, and his dad dies and he ends up having to move to this island, this Dutch island, with his uncle to live on the farm. And he's a very lonely boy. His dad wasn't the nicest person in the world. His mum left when he was young, and he's kind of waiting for her to come back and find him and get him. And he ends up kind of being bullied a little bit by these other boys on the island. And then one day he rescues this horse from the sea, and he kind of just, you know, becomes friends with the horse and learns more about horses. Turns out he's like a real natural. He kind of has a gift with horses where he's really natural and they like him, and he's able to calm them down and talk to them, and he's just a horse person, and he never knew he was a horse person, and then he realizes he is a horse person. So it's just about him and Storm, and it's just this really cute little childish tale about friendship and horses and stuff like that, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars just because it was that little bit shorter. I would have liked to have it maybe a bit longer or a little bit more in depth, but it was a kid's book, so I think if I had read this when I was 11 or 12, well 10 or 11 really, I would have loved this. It would have been a 5-star for me when I was younger, but for considering I'm a little bit older, it's a strong 4 stars, but I really enjoyed it. And the last book that I finished this week, I finished last night, and was Cathar by Christopher Bland. This is a book set, I don't know what the years are set in, which I probably should know, brush up on my history, but it's basically set around the Inquisition in France, and it's set around this one knight called Francois, and he is a Cathar, and basically it's like this different form of Christianity, and he's basically relentlessly pursued everywhere he goes by the Inquisition, and terrible things happen to him, and he just kind of keeps going and keeps trying to live his life despite all these terrible things happening to him all the time. I did really enjoy this. It's told in a really nice way. It's very kind of conversational, really easy to follow, really quick to read. I love Francois as a character. He's one of these characters that goes around and tries his hand at everything. He tries to do everything. So like he's a knight, and then he becomes like a sheep farmer, and then he becomes a cheesemaker, and he's a pilgrim at one stage. He had to do a pilgrim to Santiago de Compostela at one point, which is St. James's pilgrimage, to kind of recant his Catharism and become a proper Catholic, which he doesn't really do, but he has to do it just to get the certificate to be safe. And I really enjoyed that because I've actually done that walk myself. I did a week's walk at Santiago, and it was just nice to be able to have that in there and be like, oh, I know that walk, I've done that walk. So I really enjoyed that, and yeah, it was a very good book. The only problem I had with it is that there were different POVs in different chapters all the time, and sometimes when you'd switch a POV, you'd end up getting the second half of the story you'd just read from the point of view of the character you were reading then. And you didn't need that, so you were just kind of, there was just a lot of repetition with it, and it got a little bit boring because of that. And I kind of was like, okay, like I don't need the whole thing I've just read summed up by another character, like unless it's very important. Like I don't need everything told again to me. So that was a little bit annoying, but I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars, so I did enjoy it, and I did enjoy the writing style. I just thought that repetition just kind of let it down a lot. And I never knew anything about Catharism or anything like that, so it was really enjoyable for me to learn more about that as well, so I did enjoy that too. And then I'm halfway through Strawgirl by Jackie Kay at the moment. I this much from the end, so I'm not quite finished it, but I'm almost finished it, but I'm really enjoying it so far. I'd say this will be like a 4 star at the moment, unless something really bad happens or really amazing happens, but it's a solid 4 star at the moment, and I'm really enjoying it. So that's everything I've read this week. Please let me know what you guys think about the books I've read, and about my lovely new bookshelves, and stay tuned during the week. I have a really exciting video coming up during the week, so please keep your eye out for that as well, and I'll see you guys again next time. Bye!